All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Advice. And I know we had some comments last time that we didn't get to address. That's my bad because I posted the video a little bit late. But we're lucky this week because the first game, Viking Saints, is tomorrow. And so if you have any questions or if you're wondering about who to start or sit, definitely leave a comment below and we'll address it. We'll also be going on Twitter and helping you guys out, so look forward to that as well. And so we're gonna try a different format this week. We're gonna go for each. We're gonna go through each game, and we'll start with running backs. And in each game, we're gonna say which running backs we like and which running backs we don't like. So basically, a starter sit for each game. And last week, we actually did really well. Our wide receiver starts, and this is half PPR, averaged 15.42 points, which is I think really solid. And then our running back picks averaged 12.06 points in half PPR, which again I think is pretty solid. Um, Especially when you consider like we're not picking like the first or second round running backs like Alvin Kamara. Like we're not going must start, no brainers. We try to go with picks that are a little bit underrated. So hopefully you guys check that out and benefited from that advice. And if not, you have this week. So enjoy that. And first off, we have the Friday game, Vikings and Saints. This should be kind of an obvious starter sit. In my opinion, I think obviously no brainer. Alexander Madison is injured, out, whatever you want to say. I mean, I don't think anyone, especially if you're in the finals, is considering starting Alexander Madison, but Dalvin Cook is a must start, obviously. Alvin Kamara is a must start, obviously. I think if you're in the finals, Latavius Murray is a little bit risky. Like I don't think Latavius Murray is going to win you a finals. So I would say a sit on Latavius Murray. But what about you?
You've gone over every running back that I think is relevant for this game. You start Dalvin Cook. Even this is a bad matchup with the New Orleans Saints defense. It's Dalvin Cook. It doesn't matter. You start him no matter what. He should be staying in your lineup. Alvin Kamara as well, especially now. This is also Drew Brees is back. Latavius Murray hasn't been getting touches at all recently. And so this would be Alvin Kamara's backfield against a very poor run defense and just bad against running backs in general with the Minnesota Vikings. So you should start Alvin Kamara with confidence as an RB1. Delvin Cook is an RB1.
Yep,
No
that's a
debate.
bit of a
Yeah.
no brainer. Um, Easy one to start off. Now let's go to a little bit more complicated one. Maybe we have the Buccaneers versus the Lions, and on the Buccaneers side, we have that weird tandem of Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. Fournette had a great game last week. I think he had 2 touchdowns. And then on the other side, the Lions backfield maybe equally as confusing with DeAndre Swift, Johnson, Adrian Peterson. It's kind of it's confusing who to start each week. So Arjun, who do you think is a starter sit among those group of running backs?
I'll start with the Bucks. So with the Bucks, Ronald Jones is going to be out again this week. He's not going to pass. He's not going to pass COVID protocol, or was it concussion? It's concussion protocol. I forgot which one. But he is not going to be available to play this week. So against this Lions team that is struggling, and with this Bucks team that, though it has been kind of inconsistent and volatile with how well they play, they should handily beat the Lions and should be up most of the game. And Leonard Fournette should get the bulk of the touches, 15 touches easily this game. Even when he got 15 last game when they were trailing most of the time, he should easily get 15 this game against a terrible Lions run defense, and could easily be an RB2 this week and potentially have a breakout week with Ronald Jones out. And as for the other two possible running backs in this backfield, Keyshawn Vaughn and like LaShawn McCoy, don't even bother. They're sits. This is Leonard Fournette's backfield. Their other two are not going to get enough touches. Then going to Lions, this is Swift. This is Swift's backfield. I think you can't. Even this is like a bad defense with the. This is a bad matchup. with the good Tampa Bay Bucks defense has been very good against the run. Swift does get the receiving floor that many that will keep him in the high end RB2 range, or in the RB2 range easily. And so I would also start him with confidence against what is still going to be a tough matchup. And as for Adrian Peterson, he's not going to get enough touches. He's extremely touchdown dependent. And if you're extremely super desperate, like you would have to have too many injuries for you to even consider starting AP. So he's definitely a sit for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only scenario that you can maybe justify starting someone like Adrian Peterson is maybe you had someone like Mostert, maybe James Robinson, who we'll discuss later, is out, and you're desperate. All the running backs are off the waivers. Then maybe you throw out a flyer on Adrian Peterson, hope that he gets a goal line touchdown. But yeah, I agree. I think Leonard Fournette is a solid RB1 this week with the matchup he's getting and the volume of touches he should be getting. And then Swift, I agree, probably a mid to low end RB2 in a bad matchup. The Lions might be playing from behind, but he does have that added upside in the passing game. I'd feel comfortable starting him at flex, maybe RB2 if you're a little bit weak there. Um, Next game, we have the 49ers versus the Cardinals. And this is another game with a lot of running backs. Let's start with the 49ers first. That has been a confusing backfield this entire season. And I should know, at one point I had, I think, 3 or 4 San Francisco 49ers running backs on my team. And it was not a fun time. And it might be a little bit clearer now, now that Mostert is out for this week. I believe he's on IR actually. So he'll be out for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then obviously the other running backs are Tevin Coleman and Jerick McKinnon and Jeff Wilson. Personally, with Shanahan, he's always going to give some carries to Tevin Coleman, no matter what. It doesn't matter if he has Dalvin Cook on his team. Tevin Coleman will get 2 or 3 carries. McKinnon will get the third down starts most of the time because of his pass catching abilities. But I still think Jeff Wilson is a strong start this week. He should get the goal line touches. The Cardinals defense has been gashed before. We know they're vulnerable there. I think Jeff Wilson is a solid start. And then, with the Cardinals, I'd say Chase Edmonds. I would sit him. I definitely wouldn't trust Edmonds. Kenyon Drake's a little bit, I don't know. I still think that if you're in the playoffs, if you're in the final game, you have to start Kenyon Drake just because even though it's a bad matchup, there might not be that many great alternatives out there, especially considering the volume that he might get. So I would still say sit Chase Edmonds, sit Coleman, sit McKinnon, start Wilson. I'd say solid RB2, maybe high end RB2, Kenyon Drake, about the same, honestly. What do you think?
I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think Wilson is because with Mostert out, since when Mostert went out, he got I think around 65% of the touches from that point. And so I would say this is Mostert's backfield. He's locked for 15 touches in this backfield against a average Cardinals run defense, I'd say. And so with how good San Francisco just happens to always run the ball with any running back. We've said this everyone knows this every week. He is I'd say he's a pretty decent RB2 for this week. For the other two, Tevin Coleman and Jerick McKinnon, they're not going to get enough touches to even warrant starting. So they'll get at max 5 each at max. So they're not worth starting even at flex. As for the Cardinals, Kenyon Drake has been getting a lot of touchdowns recently. And so, but he has been putting up yards and he's getting a decent amount of touches. He's been getting in the last couple of weeks, I'd say around the 15, like around the 13 to 20 range. He'll get anywhere in there. So that's a decent amount of touches for him. And I'd say he is in the RB2 range with touchdown upside. I'd say low end RB2 range with touchdown upside. Chase Edmonds, on the other hand, is very inconsistent and with the touches, and he could get as little as 5, and he did out touch Kenyon Drake last week with 14 to 12, but I would not consider him to be any more than a decent flex play, because he does not get enough touches to warrant starting as a running back.
Right. Again, probably in Adrian Peterson, similar situation. If you're desperate, not the worst option to throw Chase Edmonds there, maybe. But I would say sit Chase Edmonds. I agree. Kenyon Drake, mid tier RB2. I would say Jeff Wilson, solid RB2 with maybe RB1 upside, considering how the 49ers love to run the ball. And he'll be getting the goal line touches. Great matchup for him. So then let's go on to the Dolphins and the Raiders. Kind of a weird backfield, but it's kind of taken some shape over time. So on the Dolphins, we have a whirlpool of running backs that have taken the field recently. Matt Breida, Gaskin, Patrick Laird, Salvon Ahmed, DeAndre Washington. And then on the Raiders, obviously, we have Josh Jacobs and then Devontae Booker, who gets most of the carries when Jacobs is out, and Jalen Richard. So who do you like there?
So with this Dolphins backfield, it is a very confusing one, given that Gaskin's going to be back, it looks like, with his return. However, Salvon Ahmed has been playing decently well, I'd say, for the past couple weeks. So it's very hard to say, to conclude that this is going to be Gaskin's given this backfield when they get back, because we haven't seen Gaskin and Ahmad play in the same week. One of them has always been out. So this is going to be the first time we're going to see both of them. And given that it's going to both of them, if I had to lean one, I would say it would be Gaskin, because Gaskin has been, even when Ahmad is healthy, Gaskin has been the better back all year. He has over the whole year, he's been better, and Ahmad's only been better, really good for like the last couple games. So if I had to pick one, Gaskin. But if they're both healthy, I'd lean Gaskin. But if Gaskin is not playing, Salvon Ahmed is a pretty good RB2, I'd say. If not, they're both flex plays.
For sure. I think maybe if I think the likely scenario is that they both play. And
yeah,
what's confusing is that we've actually never seen both Salvon Ahmed and Myles Gaskin both take the field together. It's always been one or the other, interestingly enough. So we don't exactly know how the touches will be distributed, but this is a Raiders defense that is terrible. So I would start. I maybe even I think it's risky to start either of them. But maybe as a flex, I'd feel pretty confident starting Gaskin or Ahmed. I think either of them would be a decent option. I agree more so with Gaskin, just because I feel like Brian Flores has more trust in him than Ahmed, even though Ahmed had a great game last week and a couple weeks before that as well. I just can't see him going away from Gaskin, who's been working the entire season. So yeah, I'd say Gaskin there. Ahmed, maybe if you're desperate a little bit, I'd say play him as a flex. And then with the Raiders, I think it's pretty simple. Josh Jacobs is going to get the lion's share of the carries. The Dolphins defense isn't bad.
it's
I
pretty
wouldn't
good.
say it's good.
The Dolphins defense is a pretty good defense. So I'd say but Josh Jacobs gets enough touches to warrant an RB2 start at minimum. He could be your RB1, but he's definitely much lower end RB1, given the Dolphins defense has been pretty good this year. But
Yeah.
he's definitely a start. Don't bother with the other two, Devontae Booker and Jalen Richard.
Yeah.
They're not worth starting.
Yeah, and I've had the Dolphins defense on my team, and I think that they're from a fantasy perspective, they're great. I think they're the number 3 defense. In real life, I do think they're a bit overrated. If you look at like the yards that they give up to running backs and wide receivers, I think they're something like number 17th against the rush, and I think maybe even worse against the pass. So it might not even be that bad of a matchup to start Josh Jacobs in this. I still wouldn't trust Devontae Booker or Jalen Richard. Like they're not going to get the volume to justify a start, especially if you're in a finals game. So I think that's pretty clear, and a pretty clear game of who to start and who to sit. So let's move on to the Panthers and the Redskins. And the Panthers is pretty clear. I think McCaffrey is out. He's injured. He's not going to play. The Washington defense is really good. Um, so with that being said, I still would say I would start Mike Davis um, as a low end RB2, maybe a mid RB2 at best. I don't think obviously he's a terrible matchup. The Panthers defense isn't exactly lighting up opponents, so it's a little bit of a risky play. But at flex, or if you're a little bit low on running backs, I think this is a great play at flex or RB2. And then on the Redskins side, Gibson again. I think he suffered a toe injury, so he's going to be out. McKissick had a fantastic game last week. Obviously, there's Peyton Barber in the mix. Personally, I would sit Peyton Barber, and I would start J.D. McKissick with confidence as RB2.
Personally, I think that Gibson has the potential to play. I think this week. So if he does play, I
Yeah,
would start
for sure.
RB2, and even if he does play, I would start and as you've seen, Hask loves to dump it off to JD McKissick, and I would consider playing JD McKissick as a flex, even if Gibson is playing. And if Gibson
Yeah.
isn't going to play, McKissick is easily a mid RB2, even a high end RB2, given the amount of volume he will get with the now getting the rushing attempts and the
Yeah.
receiving work that he normally does.
Yeah, yeah. I think he cut out a little bit there, but just to confirm, if Gibson does play, he's a for sure start. If Gibson plays, he'd still start JD McKissick at flex, I think, just in case of the receiving work. And then if Gibson sits, McKissick is a strong play no matter what.
Yeah.
And so let's move on to the Colts and the Steelers. So Colts, another interesting backfield, kind of taking shape maybe with Jonathan Taylor getting a lot of carries. And then on the flip side, the Steelers, James Conner is doubtful. I believe he's not going to play, but the Steelers offense struggled last week against the Bengals, which was a very beatable team. Um, Personally, I'd say start Jonathan Taylor, just but the way he's been playing. I know it's the Steelers defense, but the Colts have been equally as impressive on offense lately. And then on the Steelers side, Benny Snell, he had a decent game last week. Um, I don't know if I'd be comfortable starting him against the Colts with the way the Steelers have been playing. I think at flex, great play at flex, and maybe RB2 if you're desperate. Although I'd prefer someone like Gaskin over him for sure.
So personally, I would probably Jonathan Taylor. I'll start with Jonathan Taylor. He is an obvious start with how the Steelers defense has been completely depleted. We saw Gio Bernard go off against them last week, and Jonathan Taylor with this very good Colts team is not sittable. You start him playing recently. He's going to get touches, and this Colts team is very good and is much better than uh, the Bengals team that they played last week. So I'd say you definitely start Jonathan Taylor with confidence as at worst an RB2. Then Naheem Hines is debatable, but I would probably not start him at a flex. I'd rather sit him. Uh, it is if you're extremely desperate, maybe, but I would not consider starting him. As for the Steelers, you said James Conner, you said Antonio McFarland, and as for Benny Snell, I would not start him either. I don't think the Steelers has just not been good, and he's also like he is a starting running back, so he will get touches on a Steelers team that likes to use a workhorse running back. However, this is a very, very good Colts defense, and I would also be I would not be comfortable starting him as more than a flex. He's probably a low end flex too. But he's still a very risky play.
Yeah, very risky. And we're gonna speed through the rest of these games because we've got a lot to go. But next game is the Falcons at Kansas City, and this might be the first game in a while that Le'Veon Bell, in my opinion, is a must start because Edwards-Helaire is out. The Falcons have a pretty suspect defense. They have a great pass rush. They can definitely get to the QB, but Le'Veon Bell has been, especially in the Chiefs offense, he's utilized as a pass catching back. He runs the ball. He might get goal line touches. So I think Le'Veon Bell is a solid RB2 start this week. On the Falcons side, I wouldn't really trust anyone with the way they've been playing. Especially that, since they'll be down most likely against the Chiefs, I would sit all of the running backs, Gurley, Hill, Smith. I wouldn't trust any of them,
And
even at
also,
flex.
even if you're considering starting Gurley's not even the starter anymore, as their head coach has said. So don't start Gurley. Ito Smith's the starter, but I won't even start Ito Smith either. So even though this is like a somewhat susceptible Kansas City run defense, the Falcons have never been good at running the ball. So don't.
Yeah. And this next matchup is going to be of interest to you because you obviously have James Robinson. And so it is the Bears versus the Jaguars. I think the Bears has been pretty clear these last few weeks. If you have David Montgomery, play him. I mean, he's an RB1, maybe even a top
He's a
5 RB week to week.
he's an RB1 now. Don't and
Yeah.
against in this matchup, it's an easier matchup than
Yeah.
it's one of the easier matchups he's had in this
Right.
stretch of easy matchups. So you start him with extreme confidence
Yeah.
as like your RB1. And most people probably don't even have him as RB1. So you start him wherever you have him, whenever
Yeah.
you can.
He should kill this week. He got 32 rushing attempts last week, I believe. So this is a Jags defense that has been gashed by running backs all year. He should have a great game. And then on the flip side, it's a little bit interesting because James Robinson came down with an ankle injury, I believe. And so it's a little bit doubtful whether he'll play. If he does, obviously you play him. But if he doesn't play, who do you think? Is
So
anybody you play on Jacksonville?
if James Robinson doesn't play, I'm not playing any one of the other guys on that team. None of them are as good, and it will most likely end up being a committee against this very good Bears defense. Even if you're and also as even if James Robinson plays, I would say he is a low end RB2 slash flex play. Given if you've looked at his recent weeks, he's been saved by the touchdown every for the last couple of weeks, and his yardage totals have not been good. He's been playing against good defenses, and this is a really good Bears defense with this poor Jags offense. So don't expect if James Robinson plays, even now with the injury, I would say be very cautious and don't be too optimistic about what he could do. This is, I would say, he's a flex play with maybe RB2 upside.
Right. And then next matchup, we got the Bengals and the Texans. And I think this is another easy one, especially with how Gio Bernard played last week against the Steelers. Joe Mixon is out again. He's probably not coming back. And this is a Texans defense that's very sus against the run. I would start Gio Bernard as a solid RB2, maybe even a high end RB2. And then on the Texans side, I think David Johnson's really wrestled away. If there was any doubt whatsoever, he's put that to rest. I would start David Johnson and Gio Bernard as solid RB2s this week, no doubt.
I would consider also Giorgio Bernard to be an RB2 this week. Even though it looked kind of suspect about whether he was going to get touches the week before with the other two guys, Samaje Perine and Trevion Williams getting the touches. It looks like it's back to Gio, and Gio proved that he can do it against a very good Steelers defense. And now he's doing against probably one of the worst run defenses in the league in the Texans. And yeah, easily RB2, even if the go down early, which they probably used to be, or it's pretty average now. It's Deshaun Watson. You don't know what could happen. And so, but even with that, I would trust Gio Bernard to get some receptions, and he will have a decent RB2 game. As with the Texans, you start David Johnson. I think he is an RB2 this week, and he has RB1 upside against this very bad Bengals defense, even with Duke may not playing this week either, with him being hurt.
Yep. And next game, we have the Giants versus the Ravens. And on the Giants side, Dion Lewis has started to take a little bit of a role in the backfield. It used to be just Wayne Gallman. Devontae Freeman's basically out of the picture. But I personally I would sit both of them. I know some people would still put confidence in Wayne Gallman. I don't know if I trust Wayne Gallman, especially in the finals against the Ravens defense. I would personally sit both of those running backs. And then on the Ravens side, the Giants have actually been pretty good defensively and against the run. It's a little bit confusing as to like who, they split the carries pretty evenly between Dobbins and Edwards and even Lamar. But I would feel okay starting J.K. Dobbins as a flex. You'd be a great flex play. Certainly a decent RB2 play as well.
I personally, yeah, I agree with you. I would not play any of the Giants running backs. They're too sus for me in this matchup against the very good Ravens defense, and what's probably going to be a blow in the favor of the Ravens, especially if Daniel Jones can play, which is definitely possible. And then as for the Ravens running backs, J.K. Dobbins, I would say, again, I agree with you, is a RB2. And if you have RB2 / great flex play, and Gus Edwards is a desperate flex play. If you obviously don't have anyone else, he could get you that very rare touchdown that he ends up somehow always poaching from J.K. Dobbins in goal line situations.
Yeah, he has a decent floor, but he's not going to give you the upside that you probably want from an RB2. Maybe a flex play. I agree, a desperate flex play. And then we have the Browns and the Jets. Here, I'd say confident start Nick Chubb. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. And I'd also say confidently start Kareem Hunt as the RB2. Forget flex, maybe even RB1 upside. With the way he's been playing and the volume that he's going to get, I would feel confident playing both of them at either of my RB spots. On the Jets side, I think LaMichael Pirine is out. Ty Johnson has got a bigger role. I don't know if I'd trust. Frank Gore is obviously still there. I wouldn't trust any of those running backs. It's just confusing how it'll play out. I think if you're desperate at flex, you could chuck in Frank Gore maybe. Ty Johnson would be a really desperate play, but I personally wouldn't trust any Jets running backs this week.
I agree with the Browns running backs. Nick Chubb RB1, Kareem Hunt RB2 with upside. As for the Jets, I do personally think that Ty Johnson is a better option given his much higher receiving upside. If you've looked in the past couple weeks, he's gotten targets and receptions, as opposed to Frank Gore, who is a pure running back with no receiving upside. And this Browns defense is pretty good against the run. So I would consider, if you were desperate, if you had to choose, Ty Johnson over Frank Gore for your flex play, but I would not recommend starting either of them.
Yeah, same here. I would not recommend starting either of them unless you're desperate. And then next we have Broncos Chargers. I think this is a simple one. Start Melvin Gordon, start Austin Eckler, forget Lindsey, forget whoever, Joshua Kelly, Kalen Balaj. It's a pretty simple one for me. Both solid RB2s. Eckler maybe an RB1, low end RB1 to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think yeah, you start Melvin Gordon, you start Austin Eckler. Philip Lindsay is also extremely desperate flex, but I wouldn't start him either.
Yeah. And then next game, another easy matchup actually. Uh the Eagles against the Cowboys, which will be very interesting in the playoff picture. But I think the way that Jalen Hurts has revived this Eagles offense, I'd say start Sanders as a high end RB1. I know last week he didn't put up a great performance. I mean, he was solid, just like about nine points. But that in that game, we also saw Jalen Hurts score 4 touchdowns. He took all of the Eagles touchdowns, which is not likely to repeat. And with the way that he's revived the Eagles offense, and obviously the Cowboys defense has been terrible this entire year. Start Sanders as a high end RB1 in my opinion. And then on the Cowboys side, Ezekiel Elliott is probably out. I think he's doubtful. If he's out, I would say I would feel comfortable starting Tony Pollard with how he's been running. I think he's a very solid flex and a decent RB2 as well. He falls into the same category, I think, as someone like J.K. Dobbins to me.
Yeah, I'd say Miles Sanders is an high end RB2 this week. Yeah, as you said, Jalen Hurts has revived this uh, what used to be this very bad Eagles offense and now has everyone playing very well. And so in this good matchup for Miles Sanders, I would definitely start him as a RB2. As for the Cowboys, if Zeke does play, you said Tony Pollard. I don't think he'll get enough touches, and it's too you're guessing too much on whether or not he is going to get enough touches to be viable. Um, and Zeke would be a flex play in that situation. This is a very good Eagles offense, and Zeke has not proven to be that good this year. But if Zeke is out, Tony Pollard for me personally, I would be okay starting him as a low end RB2, but he would also be a pretty good flex play because this is his backfield now. And last week he absolutely balled out, and so um, I would be decently comfortable even with this tough matchup as starting him as a decent RB2 if Zeke is out.
I would start him as RB2 as well. And if he does play, I personally don't know if I'd start either Elliott or Pollard, honestly. So that would be interesting. And then we're coming down to our last 3 games here. Hopefully you're sticking with us. Here we have the Rams and the Seahawks. I think on the Seahawks side, this is easy. Carlos Hyde, he did break out a big run last week, and he finished with more points than Chris Carson. I think it was Chris Carson's first week that he didn't score a touchdown this entire season. That he like didn't exit the game early. But it was against strong Washington Redskins offense, or sorry, defense. So I would still start Carson as a RB2. I know the Rams defense is obviously amazing, but I think Chris Carson is a great running back. He'll get anywhere from 15 to 16, 17 touches a game, and he'll get passing down work as well. I would say start Chris Carson as a low end RB2, mid RB2. I'd be fine with that. Sit Carlos Hyde to me. I don't think he offers the upside or the floor at all for that matter. And then in the Rams, it's kind of confusing because Cam Akers is out. He had a bad game last week against maybe the worst rushing defense in the league against in the Jets. Um, and you have Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson left. Personally, I have no idea. I don't think anyone has any idea how those carries are going to be split up. So I would personally sit both Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson, if I'm being honest.
Personally, if I had to choose for the Rams, I would say that this is going to be a Darrell Henderson's backfield, given as before the Cam Akers breakout, It looked like it was Darrell Henderson's backfield for most of the year. Um, so I would be comfortable starting him as uh, I'd say as an RB2, a low end RB2 slash flex. Um, Malcolm Brown's extremely desperate flex play, given that he has poached touchdowns before from Darrell Henderson a lot. But I would not recommend starting him either. As for the Seahawks, I agree. Chris Carson is the only play on that team as an RB2. Everyone else is sittable. Even though Rashad Penny is coming back this week and Carlos Hyde is there, Chris Carson has still got it most of the touches and the snaps. So this is still his backfield.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah, I could see playing Darrell Henderson as a flex. But it is risky given that we don't know how the touches are going to be distributed. But I say at the flex, I would go for, especially the Seattle defense has not been. I mean, they've been playing better of late, but still not a great defense against the run. I mean, Wayne Gallman had a great game against them a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, I'd feel comfortable with Henderson at flex. And then a very simple game, Titans Packers. Derrick Henry starts. That's the easiest decision in the world. And then Aaron Jones starts. Jamal Williams, I think if you're desperate and you need a flex play, I would say Jamal Williams is one of the better desperate flex plays. And that, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, Matt LaFleur has been really weird with the distribution of touches in the backfield, and that, like, he'll, I don't know, Aaron Jones will go off one week and he'll give Aaron Jones like 13 touches the next week, and it'll make no sense. So I think Jamal Williams has decent upside in a great matchup against the Titans. That'll probably be a very high scoring matchup. I would feel comfortable starting Jamal Williams at flex, and Aaron Jones should be at RB1. Derrick Henry, obviously, top 5 RB in the entire league.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. That is,
Yeah,
you need to say that is a pretty easy one to go over.
right. And then the last game, we have the Bills and the Patriots. This is an interesting game because the Bills' backfield is even maybe one of the most confusing ones in the league, because we have no, like, maybe some weeks it's an even split. I guess some weeks they go with the hot hand. Singletary broke out that big run at the end to give him a good score line, but throughout the game he was pretty poor overall. And then on the other side, Damian Harris was solid for 2 weeks ago, and then the Patriots offense as a whole is just really struggling. They're out of the playoffs. I would not feel comfortable starting any one of the running backs on either of these teams. Maybe if you're desperate, I would say maybe starts Singletary or Moss at flex. I think that's a decent flex play if you're desperate, but I personally would not feel comfortable starting any of them in the finals.
So I agree. I think Buffalo's case is extremely hard to decide who's going to. You don't know who the starting running back is, who's going to get more touches. It's changed week to week for the last 5 weeks. Like one time Singletary got 21-4 over Moss one week, and then the next week Moss got more touches. So it's you don't know what's going to happen. So if I had to choose, I'd say they're both flex plays because they provide upside. If I had to choose one, Moss gets more upside for you because he is more of the goal line back as compared to Singletary. So he has that touchdown upside that Singletary doesn't. But other than that, they're just flex plays. I would not. You don't start them if you're starting them as your RB1 or two. Not as RB1. If you're starting as RB1, I don't know what you're in championship, but if you're starting as RB2, that is you're in a pretty poor spot. Um, so yeah, just flex plays, and then same for the Patriots. Damian Harris has been the only decently reliable back in this whole season, and he looks injured. So I would not start Damien here. I would not start anyone here because we don't know. The Patriots don't say anything about anyone on their team, so you don't know what's going to happen. So I would steer clear from any one of them. Even if Damien Harris is said to be out, I would not start Sony Michelle. He hasn't been good. I would not start James White. He's inconsistent. I would then, even if Damien Harris is healthy, you don't know how many touches he's going to get. because Patriots don't say how healthy they are. So yeah, none of them.
Yeah, Patriots have no reason to win this game. They're out of the playoffs. The Bills should go up big. There's a bad game script.
Oh
No
yeah,
way. There's a
terrible game
no.
script.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
chance you start any Patriots running backs this week. I'm sorry. And that'll do it. Those are all the games. So quite a long episode. Hopefully you stuck with us through this entire episode. And if you're still watching, good luck on your championship this week. If you're in that, good luck in the semifinals if you're in that, or if you're out of the playoffs, it's okay. There's always next year. And if you need some advice next year, you already know who to check out. Hit subscribe on our channel. We'll provide you with the best fantasy advice. Arjun is in our league's fantasy championship this week, and he's pretty much guaranteed to win. So you can be sure to trust his advice no matter what. And with that being said, uh, be sure to hit like on this video. Check out our next video that we'll be doing on wide receiver matchups, and we'll see you in the next video.